BBOR Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. BlackBoxNerd88 on Instagram for the bonus podcast. All right, and welcome to our discussion on the Zodiac Killer Z340 Cipher. Yesterday on the channel, I mentioned that I had perhaps discovered a way to uncode this cipher, and the first thing I would like to say is everything that we're going to be saying through this discussion is alleged, it's a maybe, if. I'm not a mind reader, I'm not a parapsychologist or anything like that. What I would instead offer is a possible interpretation of the material that we have in front of us. And what I would like to say is the 340 cipher is a Zodiac cryptogram that has not been solved to everybody's satisfaction. What the 408 is mostly solved, except for the final line of text at the bottom, the 18 uncoded characters, which may not have any particular meaning, or maybe there is some type of message that is encoded within them. But the 340 has never been completely cracked in terms of something that everybody agrees upon. And I would like to propose a possibility about why that could be. The first thing I would say is that the reason why people cannot agree on a solution to this cipher is because it's not meant to be solved in the traditional context. Instead, what this cipher is a way of telling a story. It's a way of sharing some ideas and feelings and the events in a person's life, rather than trying to find out what does each symbol mean. I do not believe that that is going to be an effective method to solve the cipher. It's been through computers. It's been looked at for 50 years. And the 408 cipher was cracked rather easily. The 340 it's going on 51 years now since this thing has been out, and people still cannot completely agree on all the different solutions. But what we should say is the History Channel did their special, and that we were talking about yesterday, where they proposed a particular solution, as well as Corey Starliper also has his solution to the 340 cipher. Many people claim that they have solved the 340 in their own ways. Even Kelly Marshall, whom we've talked about here on this channel. We have an episode called Zodiac Killer Kelly Marshall Theory, where we discuss the documentary Zodiac Rush to Editor. So a lot of people believe that they have solved the 340. So what I would like to do is just offer something a little bit different. And the first thing I would say is, I'm not sure if somebody else has said this stuff on the internet before. Maybe somebody has already come to the conclusion that I have. If so, I would just like to be very clear. I haven't read it, but I mean, you'll see as I lay this out that other people perhaps will have already figured this out. The first thing I would like to say is, if you look at this top right-hand corner, we have the word God, right? I mean, that looks very similar to the word God, G-O-N-D. If you look to the top left-hand corner, you'll see the word her, H-E-R. That is definitively her. And then there is either some type of point or an arrow or direction, but in the top corners, you have the words her and God. And what I understand this to be is this is representing birth. Even like when I said there's that point, it's almost like a sideways V, representing a sign of feminine, meaning that somebody was born. And when I don't believe that the Zodiac Killer or the person composing these ciphers or the central mind behind any of these things was a religious person in the conventional sense. I do not think that the Zodiac or the person planning this stuff believed in God. But that's just my 2 cents on the subject. Once again, I'm not a mind reader, but I would say that perhaps that represents something, some connection to childhood innocence, or some type of maybe a child believing in God at some point in his life. But you have her and God. This first line represents birth. And the different stages, or I should say the different lines in the 340 cipher represent different stages in somebody's life. And learning about the world. And I would believe that either the characters themselves or the character combinations are probably telling a story about the events of the person's life. And it's possible that the 340 cipher is the Zodiac Killer's life story. Another piece of evidence that I would say to support this is, if you look at the lines that are highlighted now, you'll see the 2 dashes that are on each of the ends. This is something that I really have to thank Kelly Marshall for. I mean, she really highlighted this one and pointed this out, that this could be something very valuable. And that ties into some other things about the Z13 cipher. My name is blank, and there's like this blank line or a dash, and she's like, that's what we really need to look for. But I just began thinking about that one, because you'll notice that there's a zodiac sign right after the dash. And what I interpret this to be is these lines here are dividing the cipher into two parts. The first one is supposed to represent childhood, and then from then on, it's to represent adulthood. And adolescence could be on either side. I'm really not 100% sure about that. But instead, I would like to say that the early things, as we said, if you look at the top, her and God representing birth, then this is telling the story of the events in somebody's childhood. And then after these two dash marks, we're going into the concept of adulthood. And some other things that we've mentioned before on the channel is that you can see in this thing here where you have Tony Tola, that you'll see right there with the Zodiac sign in the middle. It's possible that the Zodiac killer was indeed an individual named Tony Tola. He's a Zodiac suspect who passed away in 1974. I believe Tony Tola was an Oregonian, or he lived in Oregon for a large portion of his life, also California. We have an upload about him called Zodiac Killer Tony Tola on the channel. I personally don't think that Tony Tola was the Zodiac killer, but people were looking at that and they're saying, hey, now wait a second. Perhaps this was not meant to be Tony Tola. Instead, this is to New York, to Los Angeles, to NY, to LA. And that's really what it's meant to be there. And I think that would support everything that I've been saying, that these symbols are meant to tell a story, to share an idea. It's possible that the story could be coded out into exact words if some way, somehow you could decipher the hieroglyphics. Like if you had a key and then you could recognize, okay, that these combinations of symbols represent a word. Or also, I mean, it could mean that it could be so specific to the writer, as we have that, like the words her, and then the arrow, and then God, and then it's just meant to show that certain things happened in the childhood. It's so connected to somebody's memory and somebody's own personal meaning that, I mean, even if you had a key, you probably wouldn't get the exact words. But I would stand by one point where I'm saying that this is meant to tell a story, and that, like, once again, maybe someone is going to New York or to Los Angeles, someone went from California to LA, and going from California to New York as a kid, possibly, but that's really getting into some very speculative territory that I don't think is super valuable. Now we're going to go down much further, actually, because if you look at the bottom line of the 340 cipher, what you will see is something that heavily resembles the word Zodiac, and that is the Zodiac symbol with the cross going through it. Then you'll see a Z, an O, what could be a triangle or a delta sign, and then an uppercase A, I, and K. So with this here, what my interpretation of this is that the Zodiac killer, or the person writing the cipher, the central mind behind this, the person who designed all this, is showing childhood in the beginning, right? Then adulthood is coming after those two dash marks. And they're telling the story of how they became the Zodiac killer. And the conclusion of this story is that I am the Zodiac. And I think that is where it's beginning, like beginning with birth, and then going to adolescence to adulthood, culminating with the Zodiac. I am no longer who I used to be. And there's another reason why I said that, because what Kelly Marshall did contribute as well is that you can see there that there is a C, a Zodiac sign, and a W. Actually, it's WC, Zodiac, W, and then there's a backward C. Now, something to say about that is that also that one is connected to two plus signs. And, I mean, where they're very nearby, we should say. Not exactly connected, but they are close by on the same line is what I really meant to say. If you look at that WC, Zodiac, W, backward C, my interpretation of that one is not that it means clockwise or anything like that, or counterclockwise. What I was thinking instead with that one is that that was the final turning point before this person decided to become the Zodiac killer. If you look at those two plus signs, maybe that could represent some type of very severe trauma, emotional heartache, some type of a bad experience that really pushed this person to become a murderer. And then, as you see, like the WC is written correctly, or we should say it's going forwards. Then you have a Zodiac sign, and then WC written backwards, meaning that there is no turning back, or that the persona of the Zodiac killer has started to take shape. And then it's going on to some other things. POSHT is the next line there. And I think that that is very important because, first and foremost, we have the word posh. I mean, like, are we actually going to be going down to like the predecessor of Posh Spice or something like that? But looking at that T that is so close to it, it almost looks like piece of shit. I mean, that's the first thing that I think about. But the first thing I thought about was the word posh, but looking at that T is wanting to think that either this is some type of signal to someone that they want to unleash terror upon them, or that someone just feels absolutely devastated. And after this bad experience, the person feels so devastated that they are now completely in the realm of the Zodiac mode. And then in the final line there, the end of this story is, I am not the child that I used to be. I am now the Zodiac. So that's my interpretation of the 340 cipher. Once again, it's not about revealing a single precise message. It's not about what exactly does each symbol represent. I mean, it could be, but even with that, like, that would just be somebody's emotional story. What I think these symbols are meant to do is they're meant to share somebody's life experiences, but they're done in such a casual way. You're just supposed to look for certain markers. One thing that I wasn't even sure that I was going to mention was that when you look at the backwards letters, there are countless letters that are written backwards, not just that C, but also there are lots of backwards J's. There's even the backwards K, where one letter was crossed out, which was possibly an F, possibly an E, and then a backwards K was written in. Part of me was thinking that the letters that were written forwards were good experiences, and the letters that were written backwards were bad experiences. And and a point that I would use to support that would be the word her, H-E-R, and then there's an arrow, also remember V, a feminine sign, sometimes. And then there's the backwards letter P. Is that like meant to say that there's some type of bad relationship with a mother or a bad relationship with a parent? But I mean, that's just kind of going off in circles. Like, and I know we said we're going to be talking about speculative things and if, but the heart and soul of what I would really like try to convey is that the symbols here are not meant to be decoded like the 408 cipher, not with substitution, not with one symbol representing a single letter. Maybe some of it is, and maybe some of it isn't, but instead, like, I think that this is something where somebody is just channeling in their emotions, their life experiences, but that would mean that the 340 cipher is not arbitrary. And I think that there is absolutely no reason for the 340 to be arbitrary. Instead, what it is perhaps something that is so complicated and twisted that no one will ever really grasp it unless they were sitting down with the person and the person who wrote this, and they could walk through step by step. Okay, when I wrote that word her, this is what I was thinking about. And then you can see even after the word her on the first line that there is kind of like a caret pointing up, or maybe that's a masculine sign, and then the V is a feminine sign. It's possible, I mean, and that could once again talk about parents, and that is right in the center of her and God. So it's like talking about the relationship of parents and how the fundamental foundation of this person's life. I think that this is how this thing is meant to be interpreted. So someone's life story, beginning with birth, going through the childhood, then crossing over into teenage years and adulthood, and then culminating with some very bad experiences that happened right before this person became the Zodiac killer. The two pluses, WC, Zodiac, and W backwards C, meaning that this person has now transformed into the persona who is going to be murderous, or the plotting and planning of murders. I mean, that this is how this person experienced something. Someone either feels like a piece of shit, or they're calling somebody a piece of shit, and then the culmination, the ending of the story is that I am now the Zodiac killer. I'm not the person I used to be. I am the Zodiac. This is the Zodiac speaking, and so on. All right, well, I think that that's where we're going to have to leave it for now. I wasn't sure if this was going to be a short episode or a long episode, but I would like to say thank you to everybody who has listened to our upload on Richard Hoffman. We have two, actually. We have Richard Hoffman Part 1 and Richard Hoffman Part 2, and we shouldn't sign off just yet because I would like to say that we talked about the 340 cipher in there in that History Channel episode that I haven't seen yet, but I was reading someone else's interpretations of their claims on the 340 cipher. I don't really watch those History Channel shows too much, but they were saying that there is a particular line in there that they have deciphered that gives the name Richard M. Nixon, talking about the president. And I mean, I misspoke in the previous episode when I was saying that, oh, then we must be needing a suspect with 6 letters in the name. I can't believe I did that, because I meant to say we need a suspect with 7 letters in the name, because Richard and then M. Nixon would be that would be included in everything that comes after Richard, so it would actually be 7 letters in the name. And you can perhaps think of some Zodiac killer suspects named Richard. We just mentioned one, and perhaps Richard Gaikowski is a little bit more famous. But what would you like to say about any of the claims that we have made in this upload here? And I would just like to leave it at that for now. And if you think that everything I've said is completely wrong, please tell me why. And I would like to conclude with another piece of emphasis, saying that this is just a possibility. I'm not 100% completely sold on this idea, but this is one thing that I've thought about why this thing has never been solved. All right, well, that's all for me now. If you like this upload, you can hit the like button, and if you haven't subscribed yet, you're welcome to do so. But most importantly, please put some comments in the section below so we can continue the discussion, and I will see you on Instagram for the bonus podcast. Until next time.